Hello, this is Dan Sigmund, and we're coming back at you with part two about the county budget, the proposed 2026 county budget. We had a meeting this very evening. This is Tuesday night, the 28th, and the whole board was there to discuss the proposed budget with the administrator and some other individuals. So I thought I'd just give you a little bit of report on what they're talking about here. It was an interesting time. I love the way they balanced the numbers, and I don't always want to be negative about stuff, but I find too many things just aren't lining up to a conservative way of budgeting, and I'll explain why. The first thing that they explained was that typically in years past, they used conservative numbers to figure how much revenue they were going to be getting from certain areas. They figured conservatively, which is a good idea, right? They made it a point tonight to say that we're going to take higher risk now. We're going to be balancing the budget by overestimating some revenues more so than we would have typically done so in the past. So I go, well, that's one way of balancing a budget, right? Is to figure higher revenues so you can get the expenses paid for. But they said we shouldn't fall into trouble. We have a ceiling or a basement level set so that we won't get in trouble. But that's what they did. They spent quite a bit of time showing with bar graphs that here's what you have paid for a levy in the past, and you know it kind of goes up as you go further along in the years. But now what they did is they took that number from 5 to 8 years ago, and they took that dollar and inflated it to today's amount. So if that dollar back then would be inflated like our dollar is today, it would be this much value. So if we did that, they said, look at the bar graph. As the amount goes up in dollar numbers, the inflated dollar numbers comes down. So you actually are paying less in property taxes today than you were back then. And I thought, this is rich. And they just pounded that over and over. And I actually requested to speak, and I said, you know, if you would take this message out in the general public and use this to say that this proves that you're paying less taxes than you were years ago, you would probably be run out of the barn, you know. But that's where they're coming from. Everything is converted to today's dollar, inflated dollar. So everything is really positive that way. They were pushing hard for borrowing, really hard for borrowing. They want to borrow $22 million for roads every other year, and they only showed us through 2030. In addition, they want to borrow for buildings, and they want to borrow for towers and radios. So in that time period that they showed us, the bonding is going to be 10 years for roads and 20 years for buildings and towers for repayment. So the levy today is $38 million. If that 100, well, it gets closer. In 10 years, we would be borrowing $110 million for roads in 10 years. Plus we have all the 20 million a couple times over for all the other stuff. Oh, they think that we're going to only spend 20 million on buildings. And I go, I don't think so. That's real conservative, right? But so the numbers are all junk, you know, basically. But that's what they were figuring on this. So in that 10-year period, we're going to be paying $9 million a year more to add to the debt tax levy. That's above the $38 million we're paying now. And they say if we do it that way, nobody will notice it. They won't feel it as bad because you're borrowing along the way, so it just kind of adds up slowly. It gets to be heavy in the middle, and then as things get paid off, you pay less interest and it goes back down. They had two graphs there. One showed the most this would add to your property tax payment with a tax levy, and one showed what it would add without a tax levy attached. And they sort of skimmed over this point because I don't think they actually saw this, but I brought it to their attention. I said, why are we paying less for a $300,000 home, which is kind of hard to come by, especially in 10 years, right? We were going to be paying less tax on a $300,000 home without the tax levy than we would be paying with a tax levy. Totally went contrary to what they were trying to prove, and I made that mention, and they didn't have a good answer. You go back to the meeting and watch it. It's a recorded meeting, and see what their answer is, and maybe you can make heads and tails out of what they said the answer was there. But we're being sold a bill of goods here. There's no doubt about it. Borrowing. We're going to borrow ourselves rich. That's what we're going to do. So, we have $2 million going into economic development this year, but we have to borrow money to pay our bills. Now, does that make economics and conservative sense to you? Because we're giving money away, we're going to have to borrow money, and a supervisor asked that question too. These are concerns, and they're not really listening to these concerns. How about you come to the public hearing? It's in 2 days, on Thursday, October 30th, 6 p.m. in the administrative building, 4th floor. Come there and tell all the supervisors what you think about all this. You can get the budget book online, you can look at it, you can listen to, and that's what I advise you to do, listen to this meeting. There was a lot of things presented that were very good, but were not really satisfactorily addressed. But it'd be good for you to get an idea about what some of these thoughts were so you can respond to them at the public hearing Thursday night, 6 o'clock. And I myself have submitted 3 budget amendments. The first budget amendment is going to take the economic development money and take the $2.5 million of sales tax from 2025 that's left over. Take that and a little cut in the cost of living adjustment for employees and some money from the highway department, pulling that aside to fix 2 more big roads for next year that are currently unfunded. And that's why we have to borrow, because they're unfunded. But there's money there real quick. So another supervisor has another amendment that is going to be brought forward to fund more highway repair from places within the budget. I have another amendment that's going to be sort of a scaled back version. Fix the biggest road, which is Highway P, from Highway 60 to Highway 33. That chunk, 7.4 miles, is getting rough. They want to fix that. I believe that one highway, I reserved some of the funds, the same funds, but less of them to repair that one. And then the third amendment is just to reduce the COLA by down to 3% instead of the 5.14%, reduce it to 3%, which I think is very generous yet. And then reduce the tax levy, the property tax levy, by that amount too. So there are budget amendments that are going to be presented to save money and or fix roads and not let us waste it. So take a look at that meeting, take a look at that meeting, listen to it, jot notes down, and let us know what you think about what you heard there. That's what I have for part 2 here. We will hopefully look forward to seeing you on Thursday night. Bye.